Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, Paul. It's good to be back in studio with you once again. I tell you, I'm really looking forward to our show today because we are about to take a direction that we have never before broached. We have with us a relationship expert and author, Elliot Katz, and today Elliot and I will have a discussion about his book, Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants. I have so many questions for Elliot, like, are women really frustrated about a plethora of weak men running around in the date scene? Or how does a strong man motif come into play in the 2019 era of ever-expanding strong woman movement? And also, mostly, what does it actually mean to be a strong man? So this is going to be fun. Elliot Katz is the author of 7 nonfiction books, appears regularly on radio and television interviews, and he interviews the principles of this book to men and women and speaks in conferences to groups for both men and women. Elliot's book, to me, has withstood the test of time in that it was first written in 2007, rewritten, I believe, in 2012. Is that right, Elliot?
Yeah.
And it is still selling today. It's translated into 24 languages, which is
world,
which is quite impressive. So let's bring Elliot on to discuss this potentially controversial book, we'll see, Being the Strong Man Every Woman Wants. Elliot Katz, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Great to be here.
Well, it's going to be a fun time. Tell me, you wrote this book in 2007 at a time that I look back and I wouldn't even anticipated a strong man issue. What inspired you to write this book on a strong man in relationships?
Well, like a lot of books, it's the result of my own journey. I was married, then I got divorced, and like a lot of people, at first I blamed the other person. Then I came to the point of asking myself, what do I have to learn from all this? I don't want to go through this again. So I set out on a journey to learn what does it mean to be a man in a relationship. First I started talking and listening to other men, and the more I listened, the more I realized a lot of us are confused. Then I started reading books on relationships, and they really didn't say anything to me. And it's only when I turned to the teachings that over the centuries, over the generations, that men used to teach younger men about being a man, I was blown away, because what I learned coincided with what I heard men complain is lacking in men today. They don't show leadership, they don't make decisions, they don't take responsibility. There's this giant disconnect between all the things this generation of men have heard and what women really want. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, that is, in your book, you do make plenty of references, several references to sages 100 years old, 100, 200, 300, 400, even 1,000 years ago, that I found quite interesting and quite helpful. I am thinking of a question, but another question came to my mind, and that we are definitely, I think we need to make clear that we're talking about a strong man, and primarily we're talking about a strong man in a relationship, right? We're not talking about strong men at work and whatsoever. Or does this apply to that area as well?
Well, it's about being a strong man in a relationship, but I think really men have to be strong elsewhere, and in the outside world. But it's primarily about being a good husband, being in a relationship with a woman where the woman will, and you'll feel respected.
So perhaps we can start with a most important question that I think needs to be addressed before we can even go any further on the show. And as you outline in the book, which is a really good read, what, in your opinion, does it mean to be a strong man?
Well, we're talking about emotional strength. It's about really being a leader, being the woman, being a man that a woman can look up to and feel that he's a tower of strength. The way women describe it to me, the rock that she can lean on. It's not about being controlling or abusive. Like that's not being strong. That's being insecure and domineering. That is not strength. It's really about being that man who shows leadership, who takes responsibility for what's going on in his family. He doesn't blame his wife for things that go on, and he makes decisions. He takes steps forward and doesn't always say when his wife wants his input on something. He doesn't say, "Oh, you decide. Whatever you want is fine with me. It doesn't matter to me." That's being strong. Step forward. Be a man.
What about in a situation of a strong woman, of an equally strong woman, who's not necessarily either domineering, but she just, she is very strong, such as my wife is a very strong woman.
A strong woman wants a strong man. She doesn't want a man who's weak, who just panders to her. She wants a man who can stand up for himself, because she wants to feel protected. If he can't stand up for himself, he won't be able to stand up for her. So I've met a lot of strong women today, and they want men who are, they're equal or stronger. They don't want men who are weak. And a lot of successful women today, we meet women who are, 30s, 40s, 50s, successful, attractive women, and they're not married. And they say, "Well, I can't find a decent man." And what do they mean? They don't want a man who just wants to be, just do whatever the woman tells him to do. She doesn't want that. I've spoken to many women who are very successful in business, and they'll say, I may be a boss at work, but with a man, I want to feel like a woman. I want him to take charge. She doesn't want a man that she has to rule over. It really turns women off when they, if they have to always tell a man what to do, and the man is just letting himself be ruled over.
Yeah, it's funny. The quote you just used was a quote that I had for later on in the podcast that I love from your book. My ex-husband never understood that I may be the boss at work, but when I am with a man, I want to feel like a woman. What are men missing in this? Why do you think? Well, obviously you wrote a book on it that is an issue. How prevalent is this issue of men not taking a manly or strong role, which we will define even more, that's not domineering and controlling and my way or the highway? It's something completely different. But did you find a lot of men in that situation?
Absolutely. When I wrote the book, I was actually writing it for myself and my friends, because I thought we were the ones who needed it. But I come to realize it's a very common situation, because really a man needs to learn how to be a man. It doesn't come naturally to him. Traditionally, a father was a role model to a boy, but over the past 50 years we've seen big changes in our society. Men work long hours. There's so much divorce. So many boys are raised without fathers, or the father is really just a visitor in their lives. At school, most teachers are women. They watch television. Men are portrayed as incapable buffoons. Where is a young man, to learn how to be a man today? So, the fascinating thing is, like I said, when I wrote the book, I wrote it for myself. But, the book, as you said, has been translated in 24 languages in countries in Europe, Asia, Latin America, Africa, and countries where you think, oh, gee, like in Brazil, where you think where the whole idea of machismo originated, it's a big seller there. It's really, I think men naturally have to learn how to be a man. They need to be taught. And if they're all the messages they receive from the media about, be sensitive, develop your feminine side, yes, be sensitive to other people's feelings, but still a woman wants a man who's a leader. When women ask me, what does your book say it means to be a man? And I said, well, if you want it in one word, it means to be a leader. They smile like, well, how do I find a man like that? Men need to learn these things, and that's really why I think the book has got so much attention around the world.
What does it mean to be a leader?
It means to know what's going on in your family. You see a situation that needs to be dealt with, step forward and deal with it. As long as, I tell men who say to me, well, my wife's been running the show for 10 years, what should I do? Well, don't undermine her. Look for situations that are not being dealt with. Step forward and deal with them. Keep dealing with them. Don't blame your wife. I coach guys, and they're all saying, well, I got this situation at home. It's all my wife's fault. And that situation, my wife isn't, she should be solving it. I said, you are responsible for everything that goes on in your home. You see a situation, it's your job to step forward and handle it. Just don't blame your wife. You're just going to alienate her, and you're not solving anything. Step forward.
Right.
Step forward and find a solution and do it, and just keep doing that. You will be her hero, because that's really what she wants.
I've been married 33 years with, believe me, lots of ups and lots of downs. But one thing has come to my attention as a contributing factor in my management of our marriage, and that is what I'm calling collaboration. And that's where my leadership in our family comes in. It's leading us into collaboration. Because if we have a conflict or we have an issue, my wife is not DNA'd to bring it up and deal with it. I once made a comment, honey, what are we going to do when the day comes when I get so weak that I have a weak spurt and I'm not able to bring up these conflicts? Are we just going to go down the drain? And we just kind of laughed about it, because it really is true. Unless I have that strength to lead us into collaboration and to lead us into, okay, here's the situation, let's talk about it. Or there's certain areas of the family, like our investment finances that I pretty much manage. I'm not necessarily looking for approval as I am keeping her aware of what's going on. And if she does have any concern or feedback, she has that ability. So I guess I'm asking, what do you think of leading into collaboration rather than being the sole decision maker?
Well, leading into collaboration, I mean, that is the correct way. It really depends on the situations. So if it's for your investments, if it's for certain things, definitely you should get your wife's input. But the main thing I tell men, don't go into the situation that you think you're collaborating with your wife by saying, well, what should we do? Come forward with a plan. Be a man with a plan. This is, women say, be a man with a plan. That's what they like to hear. So, but then there are other situations where maybe she doesn't really want you to have to ask her. Maybe she just wants you to handle it. So you have to use your judgment to decide what's those situations. Maybe they're minor situations. You just handle it, and she's happy that you've handled it. But obviously major decisions, you have to collaborate. But you can't just go into it and say, oh, what should we do? What do you want? Like, tell me what to do. I'll do it. It's not, she's not inspired by that. Also,
no. Yeah, go ahead.
Another situation is that often, men and women speak different languages. So a woman will say something like, she'll say to her husband, you don't do enough at home. And he thinks, well, what are you talking about? I come home from work, I put the kids to bed, I give them baths, I change a diaper, I do all these things. And I say to these guys, yeah, but, a nanny could do that. But how are you the man of the house? You have to know. So what she's really saying is you're not showing leadership. You need to be aware of situations that need to be dealt with and show some leadership on dealing with them. Don't put them all on your wife. I remember talking to one guy, and he says to me, he lets his wife make all the decisions because he says, I'm a nice guy. I want to be a nice guy. And I say to him, well, yeah, but your wife wants a man who can make decisions and show leadership, not necessarily a nice guy. And then he admitted that it was actually easier just to let her make all the decisions. Yeah, of course it's easier. It's hard to solve problems and find solutions. So she resents you. You think you're being a nice guy, but really it's like you're justifying just leaving it all to her.
It's easy to cast blame when you're leaving it up to her, too, because if it doesn't go right, then it's her fault. And you had nothing to do with the decision and nothing to do with the process. And so that sort of takes you out of even having the right to comment on how well this was executed.
Charlie, that's exactly the next thing I tell guys. It's like, you leave it to her, then if it goes wrong, you could blame her. But if you do that, it just builds up resentment. But the thing is, men don't really understand how important this is. Like, man thinks, well, look, we'll do whatever you want. You decide. And he thinks he's being a nice guy, but she really resents you. And I've had women say to me, when a man leaves all the decisions to her, it makes him feel like he's a child and she is his mother, and she doesn't want to be, she wants a husband, not a child.
How common is this, Elliot? I mean, this is, you've got a book on it, translated in 24 languages. Do you find it extremely confident? Or, what word did I just lose?
No, it's common.
Common, yeah.
It is common. Especially, it's interesting. At first, when I wrote the book, I wrote it for men. I tell them, read the book, don't let your wife see it. The biggest fans are the women, and because women understand. When it's like, I don't have to say much. I said, that men today don't act like men, and they understand exactly what I mean. When I say that to a man, he doesn't understand. It's like when I say to him, you've got to be a leader, not a controlling tyrant. Nobody wants that, but you've got to show your share of leadership. And like they say, no one's ever told me this. How come no one told me this before? They've never heard this before. They argue with me. Hopefully there's a woman beside me so I can say, ask her, she'll tell you. And that's what happens. Yeah, they want a man who can take the lead. Even on a simple thing like going on a date. I couldn't count the number of single women who said to me, a guy asks them out, and then he can't even choose a place to go for a cup of coffee. Then when they finally get to a place, he can't even choose a table to sit at. He wants her to make all these decisions. And he thinks he's showing that he's, this nice, non-controlling guy, but the woman is totally turned off because if you can't even choose where to go for coffee, how are you going to handle real decisions in a marriage and a family? It's really important.
Yeah, I can see how a man is so confused, especially in 2019 with all of the rhetoric that goes around. Like you said, this goes all the way back to the education system, and it goes back to early education. Dr. Jordan Peterson has really talked a lot about this, about the education system is dominated by female, and there is, what I understand, I don't have the exact data on it, but there is a fair bit of near male bashing in it, and that men need to be more like women, and I find that very destructive to young men.
It's very destructive, especially today. We hear about toxic masculinity, as if like all men are abusers and forcing themselves on women or they're bullies. Yeah, there are some men like that, but that's not what it means to be masculine. But the way it's presented today, like that's the natural way of men, that they're toxic, they're abusive, and we need to have programs to reprogram them, to deprogram them out of these ways. You know what? I don't know men who are like that. I accept that there are some, but most of the men I know are decent people.
Yeah.
They're married. They want to have their wives to be happy. They want to raise their children to be decent people. They're not abusive. They're not controlling. And like to be portrayed as like every man is violent, every man is abusing women. Any problems in a marriage, it's because the husband's abusing his wife. Like this is not reality. It's really a challenge to men. We have to stand up and say, no, we are not this way. But part of what really bothers me about all this messaging that we're seeing now is like, well, where's the positive messages? Like,
right.
I don't want to be abusive. I don't want to be controlling. But what does it mean to be a man?
There has, that's what makes the press is the bad messages, the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, who's obviously not immensely disrespected, and you see that, and it is somehow taken to this represents all men, and it just does not represent all men. It represents a very few minority of scumbags, I guess you would say.
These people, their bad behavior does not define what being a man is. It defines bad behavior.
Well, I've got a question to you that we're going to move from 2007 to the 2019, but I want to do that after a break, Elliot. So we're going to take a brief break. Hang in, and we'll be right back. Hi, you're listening to Charlie Hedges in the Next Chapter with Charlie. And today, my special guest on the podcast is Elliot Katz, who is the author of Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants. And his thesis is that it was stated really well by a woman executive who stated, "My ex-husband never understood that I may be the boss at work, but when I'm with a man, I want to feel like a woman." And that's what we're talking today, is how can a man do his role in a relationship or in a marriage and not be dominating or controlling, but at the same time have the strength of something in your book called manliness, and I think did you call it husbandness?
Husbandship.
So as I was reading a bit from you, you have written that a strong man, there were three areas that were highlighted. Strong man needs to share leadership, make decisions, and take responsibility. Share leadership, make decisions, and take responsibility. Now, if that is not if not understood, as you so convincingly wrote in your book, these qualities of leadership, decision-making, and responsibility could so easily sound like the qualities of the man of the 1950s, who saw it as his role to be the leader, make the decisions, and I'm not sure where to go with takes responsibility, but we'll see. So how is your strong man different than that man?
Well, I think, it's interesting. We look back on the 1950s. We think of some of those television shows that were very idyllic, where the man, like Father Knows Best, where the man came home and, found out what the problems that were going on in his home and solved them, and everybody was happy. Obviously, family life is not that easy, but really, I don't believe human nature has changed, and really since for thousands of years. Some of the insights in the book are written 1,000 years ago, and I read them. It's like, wow, this is so fresh.
Right.
It's like if it was written today. So, women want a man to show his share of leadership at home. She doesn't want a man who comes home and just is passive and, just tell me what to do, I'll do it, and whatever decision has to make, you make it. She doesn't want that. And I from what I've seen, really nothing has changed. But nothing has changed. Women still want that, and a man still has to develop himself. It's really about a man growing into that role. I mean, when a young man gets married, when I got married, I didn't have a clue. But, really, marriage should be an opportunity for that man to grow into the role of being a strong man. And that's, he's got challenges. When you're married, you have a lot more challenges thrown at you than when you're single. And it's your job to step forward and handle them. And you grow from them, right? That's what so much of life is about, is handling those challenges that you didn't ask for. So I think the man of the 50s and the man today, underneath it, they're the same man. It's just the man today has to learn this is really what a man is supposed to be.
As I listen to you, a word comes to my mind, and that is involvement. That a man needs to be intimately involved in his marriage, in taking the leadership role in these different roles. But it means he's involved. He's not, that old idea of I go to work and I work my 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 or whatever it is, and I have contributed to the family. The rest is up to you. That's just a sure way for trouble in a marriage, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think the word, that's one of those words that really bothers me. A man will say, well, I'm involved, and very often it's what I was describing. He comes home and he says, just tell me what to do, I'll do it. And a lot of men will say, well, I work very hard at my job. I'm exhausted when I get home. I can't. I don't want to think about solving problems. I've been solving problems all day at work. So I tell these men, just like you work hard at your job because you want to provide a nice life for your family, in the same way, you have to save some energy so that when you come home, you become aware of what's going on and you show your share of leadership for the same reason, because you want to have a nice life for your family. So many men who work hard, and I'm sure you've seen this too, They worked hard to provide a nice life for their family, and they end up divorced. And they're thinking, well, what did I do wrong? I worked so hard. I got up at 4 in the morning to get to work by 5. It's like, what went wrong? I was a good provider. I thought I was a good husband and father. And based on the comments in my book, I've so many women have said, my husband wouldn't take responsibility. He didn't show any leadership. I couldn't be married to him anymore. It's very sad. It's very sad. It's so really, and I really believe it's because men didn't learn these things. If they, I've had comments on this book. Men have said who are divorced have said, if I had known this, I probably wouldn't be divorced today. I've had women say. One woman said to me, if my husband had understood this, our marriage of 39 years would not have disintegrated. It's really important to women. Men don't understand how very important it is, but it is.
And you think that a question that's been on my mind since the beginning of our conversation, and I think we've probably alluded to it. If not, I'm surprised. But a lot has changed in the roles of women in our society in between the years of 2007 and 2019. We have a lot more women in public view of leadership, and a lot more women that are there. There's not nearly as many women CEOs and all, but there are. My wife runs groups with several women that are on the E level and executive board or executive levels of companies that are strong women and making strong decisions. Do you think the concept of a strong man or the qualities of a strong man have somehow evolved between 2007 and 2019, or do you think they're exactly the same?
Well, I think what you're saying is that women have stepped forward and taken on strong leadership roles, and that's a positive thing. But I still go back to really what you quoted as what you thought was the thesis of the book, is that, I may be a boss at work, but when I'm with a man, I want to feel like a woman. She really wants a man to be her equal. She doesn't want a man who's just going to pander to her. She has all those men at the office. She tells what to do. When she comes home, she doesn't want to tell a man what to do. She wants a man who could share leadership at home. And you see that. And
unless she has issues. And then,
well, if she wants to be controlling, those kind of relations. Well, some men want to be controlled. Well,
yeah.
If that works for them,
if that works, yeah.
Situation.
What? So you think fundamentally nothing has changed, and that woman still wants a strong man?
Oh, absolutely. You know what? It's part of my journey. While writing the book and after writing the book, it's the number of successful women I've met who really want a man who's strong like they are, who can make decisions. She really doesn't want a man she has to tell what to do. She doesn't want a man who comes across as a child. She wants a man who is her equal.
Yeah, I like that word that you use. It's the second time you used that word, and that came across as I was describing it to somebody as I was writing up this episode, and she's dating and looking for a man. She's 35 years old, and the word equal came up, and because she's a manager of a good size corporate club, and she has several direct reports, and so she is a strong woman, but she wants a man her equal, that they can cohabit, exist and think of things in a cooperative sort of way, rather than one lording it over the other.
Absolutely, and so that's the challenge for men, to grow into those roles, to grow stronger, and so that woman will see him as her equal. That's a lot of men today will say to me, "Oh, I meet women, they make 3 times as much as I do," and they're intimidated by that. But
right.
I don't really think it's the amount of money. It's really the amount of self-confidence. It's about if you feel like you're going to be intimidated by her, well, she doesn't want somebody who's intimidated by her. But if you feel confident and can show your share of leadership and make decisions and take responsibility and be the man that she's looking for, the amount of money you make, there's lots of situations where men make tons more money than their wives, and they still doesn't work. So money like men will feel that she'll rule over me because she makes more money. No, she won't, as long as she can respect you, because you're a strong man. It's interesting. One of the things I talk about in the book is, we talk about what does it mean to be a man, and the media is so focused on all the negative things, but just by looking up the word manly, manly means the noble qualities of a man of mature character, such as decisiveness, the strength in one's convictions, confidence, self-reliance, high moral qualities, self-discipline, integrity, courage. These are the things that women like in men.
It's things that people like in people. I mean, it's just...
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you look up the word virtue, one of the original meanings of the word virtue is manly qualities. So, the media
is that right?
Focused on all these negative things about men, and we have to redefine what it means to be a man. No, we have to look about what it really means to be a man and what the qualities a man has to strive to develop in himself.
You know something I really believe in, Elliot, and I think I told you before the show we were chatting, and I told you one of the things my wife and I have done for the most part of our marriage, and my listeners are familiar with this, is that we go on our annual retreat and we just talk about our relationship, and we make decisions together about what that would look like, and her role and my role sort of, we don't say what is your role, what is my role, but they will emerge from the conversation. I will see where she is strong, and she will see where she is strong, and she may be her area that I will sort of let her take the lead in it, take the charge in it, but it doesn't mean I don't have any say. And then there's areas that are obviously my areas of strength, and I take those areas with full rigor. And I think part of the problem here is why can't we just talk about these things? If we just had a conversation, about this, I think it would go a long way, rather than trying to assume exactly. We can make assumptions in a general sort of way of what women want and what men want, but in a specific relationship, there are specific needs, and that relationship, that needs to be discussed, don't you think?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. What you're describing is really a partnership. In any partnership of two people, not only a man and a woman, but it could be two business partners. Each one will bring their strengths to that partnership, right? And so you trust that person to deal with the area that he or she is strong in, and you deal with the area that you're strong in, and you respect each other for that. So that's how it should be. But as I've said, what happens too often is the man just thinks, "Oh, I'll just let her do everything.
No.
I'll let her decide."
Yeah, that's crazy.
And why is she so fed up with me? I'm such a nice guy.
And he means by nice guy that he provides at work, and he lets her decide where she can have dinner and where she wants to sit, and she is interpreting that. While he may have good intentions, he may indeed have good intentions, she's interpreting that as a lack of interest. Right. Well, just not just a lack of interest, but he's leaving all these responsibilities on her, and she resents that, and she feels. I remember once hearing a woman say, she resented that her husband said to her, some vacation time was coming up, and he said, "Well, here, you plan the vacation. We'll do whatever you want." And I have to tell you, I'm preaching leadership, but I thought that's pretty nice. No, she resented that. She said, "It makes me feel like he's a child because he left everything on her." And it's right. She didn't want it all thrust on her. And really, when the man says that, it's like really he's shirking that responsibility. He's like, "Here, you do all that work, and if it goes wrong, well, I'll blame you." It's like, yeah, from our conversation, I'm taking I'm taking the idea that my role in my marriage, now this is for Charlie Hedges only, this is not for everybody else, but my role is certainly to be a leader, but as I said earlier, it's a leader in collaboration, in conflict resolution. It's being the leader to make sure that we are making a conscious choice and a conscious effort to have an outstanding relationship. It's not something we take for granted to think it's just going to come naturally,
right.
Because it doesn't come naturally.
No.
Our egos get in the way, and we have to somehow bypass those egos. And so I feel pretty strongly. I like the idea of leading in collaboration, and if it's my gift, to lead in conflict resolution. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, absolutely. One of the things I teach men is, this whole idea of think before you speak. Like, you may want to say something. A leader, one of the most important lessons of leadership is you have to communicate the way the person needs to be communicated to, not
right.
the way you want to communicate to them. So if you're a boss at work and you might have a job and you want to say, here, do it, come back on Tuesday. But maybe that employee needs more than that. Maybe they need a full set of instructions. Maybe they need some encouragement. So the same thing in a marriage. You might feel like telling your wife, she may have done something that you may feel, that's so disrespectful. I'm entitled to blow up at her. But you have to control yourself.
That's
your relationship.
That's a perfect illustration, because it is as an ex-business consultant and executive coach to CEOs, I would easily see that if the person in charge, boss, whatever you want to call them, doesn't speak in a language that is understood and accepted by the receiver, then he or she is recognized as a crappy boss, a bossy, my way, do it my way, rather than sort of understanding how this person wants this information. Some want it. Some want it concise and right to the point, just tell me what to do, and I'm fine. But others want a little rationale along with it. And I think the same thing goes with marriage, and that's why I said each couple needs to decide how they're going to manage this part of the marriage. And you're certainly going to fail in the process, but you're going to succeed in the long run because you'll learn from your failures if you're open to that.
Right. But the important thing is, think about, what does your wife need to hear? If you want her to support you, if you want to inspire her to do something that she doesn't really want to do, what does she need to hear? What maybe she needs for you to explain how what you want to do will help achieve what's important to her. Think about, what does she need to hear? Don't just think, what do you want to say? Don't just react emotionally, because you'll probably regret it. Think about, what does she need to hear?
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that. And another little phrase comes to mind, and it's just simply paying attention. There are too many times we come home from work, men or women, and we are, as you said, we're exhausted and we just kind of go through the motions, but we're really not paying attention to the emotions of our spouse or to the person that we're committed to in this relationship. And it's noticing those things, because I notice what my wife likes, and every now and then she'll make a comment to me like, you haven't made a comment on the way I dress lately. And I don't take that lightly. I just say, she's, for her to come out and say that has taken she's come to a point of frustration, and B, it's taking courage from her for her to come to me and say that. And not saying in a demeaning tone or a castigating tone, but it's just in a tone of just kind of letting you know, I might like to hear some compliments every now and then. And so, I did learn to pick up on that. And
right.
And I think it's about, Elliot, I think it's a lot about paying attention.
You're right, and that's a very good example because, a man, if his wife gave him a compliment once a month, he'd probably be happy. but for a woman, it's like we have to realize when we talk to our wives, we're not talking to another man. A woman needs, more compliments more often, right? And so she needs to be reassured. You find her attractive, and you like the way she dresses, and all these things. So it's like I say the things to her that she needs to hear.
Yeah.
You want to hear. It's like you don't say to her, well, once a month it's enough for me, should be enough for you. Well, that's if you're talking to yourself.
Yeah, I may have. I don't know if I want to use the word pushback, but just to say, I'm not so convinced that men don't need it equally as much. That it may be a bit stereotypical because I find, my wife just gave me a couple compliments last night, and certainly, I mean, they were extremely strong, and they would they'll certainly last for a month. But she'll give me. She'll give me 5 compliments a week, and well, maybe not that many, but close to that. She's very caring and very observant, and at the same time, an extremely strong woman. She runs her own business. She's a highly sought after consultant in Orange County. Certainly in the top 10 in her field. And she runs a couple of different groups, sits on boards. She is definitely a strong woman, but she is that woman. When I'm working, I may be the boss, but when I'm home with Charlie, I want to feel like a woman, and I want to be treated like a woman, and I want to be cared for.
Right. And it's interesting, she's a consultant, so she's being a consultant, you have to be very aware of what your client needs to hear, right? And you have to say it in a way that your client will be receptive to it. If you're a consultant, right, making recommendations to a client, you have to make those recommendations in a way the person will be receptive to hearing them and, implementing them. So it's the same thing in a relationship. You have to look at your spouse and what does your spouse need to hear? And how do you need to say it to your spouse so they'll be receptive and to hearing what you're saying and receive it positively, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, it's really come to my attention that we are probably living in the most confusing times in the world of male and female relationships. I thought this was happening in 1980 when women were just first starting to take a major role in society, just beginning to take leadership positions, and now we had a woman running for president, and it won't be long until we have a female president, which I think is just great. So roles are changing almost daily, and yet I was going to ask if your book of 2007-2012 is still relevant in 2019, but as you have pointed out, you were not just coming from a point of reference in your book, and I would recommend it to our readers, that you don't come from a point of reference of the 2000s, but you come from hundreds and thousands of years ago, of where truth was told, and those truths still are valid today, and that was one of the things I really appreciated about the book, and the storytelling methodology that you took in it, I thought was quite interesting. So I would recommend this book to any couples that are going through any of these kinds of issues. I think you did a wonderful job.
Thank you very much. I really feel, like I said, that the human nature hasn't changed. And as I say, I would read, writings from, 1,000 years ago, and I said, wow, this is exactly the situation I was facing today. It's like, whoa. It just shows that human nature really hasn't changed. And, it's also interesting, like I said, the book was translated in 24 languages. So it really says to me, even though cultures may be different, because,
yes, that's shocking to me.
It's the same, that the book was published in Japan, where you think every man has a geisha, or in Russia or in Greece or in, in Africa. It's like, whoa, like it really shows that this is the nature of man. We need to learn the proper way to be a leader who like I said, makes decisions and takes responsibility. It's something that has been lost to this generation, and you see so many men who are so confused and lost. They want to be good men, they want to be good husbands, they want to be good boyfriends, but they're not succeeding because they're just haven't been learned.
Yes, they're uneducated in it.
Fathers taught their sons.
Yes, and that's another story that we could pursue, but we're running out of time. But that is the influence of fathers on their sons, and the greatest influence that the son can see is how does the father treat his wife, how does the father treat his mother, and that is probably the greatest teacher of all.
Absolutely, and it's. I tell people, if you're having problems in your marriage, read the book. It's a lot cheaper than getting divorced.
No kidding. Elliot Katz, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to The Next Chapter with Charlie. And be sure to check us out at our website, thenextchapter.life. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.